this video we'll learn how we can publish an ASP.NET web application to Windows Azure using Visual Studio. So let's get started. So here I have an ASP.NET web application that connects to a database. Now we want to publish this application to Windows Azure. For that, I'll go and log into my Azure subscription. And here, the first thing to do is to go and click New to create a new website. And from this list of options, you should go to Web plus Mobile. And from here, you choose Web App. Here you give a name for your website app that will have the .azurewebsites.net postfix here. So let's call it employees directory, for example. That's an available name. And here you choose your subscription. By default here I have my Part6 subscription. Now you select your resource group. Let me zoom on that. So for your resource group, you can choose one of your already existing resource groups, or you can go and create a new one. For me, I'll go and choose this one, default Web Europe, West Europe. So once I have done that, now I'll go and hit create, and this will take a moment until Azure will do all the configurations needed to reserve a space for my ASP.NET application. Now that the deployment did succeeded, now I can click on that and go to my website. Is the employee directory app service here. So actually this one is for the notifications, so I can go to my website by going to all the resources, and here I go and look for my employees directory. So it's West Europe, and it should be this one, employee directory. So this is the URL in case I want to test my application. Let's hit that URL, then it will open my website here. You see the URL as specified when I created that website on Azure. But now it just created an empty space for my website. There is no content yet, and there is also no database. So after creating the space for my app, now I need to go and add another database. Let's look for data connections. So here I get it. Clicking on data connections will bring this new window here. It's telling me that there is no data connections because by default there is no database attached to my website. So I'll go and create a new one. Here it's asking me if I want a SQL database or if I want to access storage space, but I want a SQL database. So let's configure that. Now let's select SQL database, configure required settings. Here for my subscription, as there is no database, I'll go and create a new one. Let's give it a name. Let's call it employees DB, for example. And from here, for the pricing tier, you can choose between different offers, from the free ones to the paid ones that goes and 1,000 and even 3,000 USD. For this demo, I'll choose this one, B, the basic database. Hit select. Now I click OK, so that go and create the database, but now it's telling me that the value should not be empty for the server, so I'll go and configure that. Here it's asking me for the server name. Let's call it employees DB, and it asks also for a login, so let's put my login and my password. We should give it a strong password. Then here we can choose the location. For me, I already confirmed that it should be West Europe. Here, just a simple hint, you should choose the same location for your website and your database, so that the amount of data transferred between your database and your website will not be paid. Otherwise, if your database and your website are in different Azure data centers or regions, then all that amount of bytes or of data will be charged for you. So to save some dollars, you should choose the same location for your website and your database. So let's click OK now, and OK again here, and OK here to create the database. Now the process of creating the database have just started, and also this will take a couple of minutes. The creation was completed successfully, so now I should be able to come back to my database, to my website, and see that I have a database here attached to my ASP.NET web application. So now the second step to do is to go and get the publish profile. This profile contains all the information about how to host my website to Azure and how to deploy my database also to Azure. So I'll go and save that file. So now, after having that file, I come back to Visual Studio, and now I will start the process of publishing my my ASP.NET application to Azure. For that, I'll go and right click on my project, then choose Publish. Here you will have a couple of options. The which one we'll use is the import, because we have our Publish profile. Now I'll go and browse to my Publish profile. So should be called Employees Directory, as the name of my website, Employees Directory. Hit open. OK. Now it's Visual Studio is reading that publish profile, which is an XML file that contains information about the server, or where Visual Studio will push our local ASP.NET application, and then have information about the username and the password. Here it's a generated one by Azure, and the site where my application will go to. Click next. Here you can see that here it's telling me no database found in the project. So this is an unexpected error from Visual Studio. Actually, if all things are alright, then you should get an entry here where you can choose the value of the connection string that you get from your publish profile. So if then you get this error like me here, then you can go and fix this one by closing this dialog and go to your web config. Here where you have the connection string value that will be hosted to your Azure website. So here it's pointing to my local DB, but when this file will be deployed to Azure, Azure will read this value again and try to find this database inside the data center, but as it will not recognize this one as it's local to my machine, then Azure will fail to connect to this one. So we should replace this connection string by the one provided by Azure. So where do I find that connection string? Actually, you can find it inside our publish settings that we downloaded earlier. So if I go and open that publish settings file, it's an XML file. The publish settings is actually an XML file that contains information about connecting to Azure hoster, and also it contains information about our database. So here you see the name of my connection string and then the value of the connection string, which have information about where my database is located on, and the port number used, and also the user ID, and also the password. Here I have just hided it for security reasons. And now we need to get this connection string, copy it, and use it inside our web config file here. So I go and replace this all connection string here. Let's copy it, then let's comment it and create a new one here. Let the same name here, but now I'll go and change this connection string. So I'll change that value by the value provided here, copy again, and here I'll paste it. So now I should be able to go back to the publish settings. So I go to set publish. Of course, that should be done after giving the right password to your connection string here. You shouldn't let it as I have it here, stars. So now I can go and hit publish. That process will take a couple of seconds. So now it started the publishing. You can monitor that activity on using your Azure App Service activity here. And yes, my application was published, and I can click on this link to open my application. So I'll go here. Let's actually copy it. I can't copy it, so let's right click on it. And here I can go to that website. It will go to my index page. For me, I want to go to where my data lives, to my database. So I'll go to /API employees, so I can get that list of the employees. And by going to that link, Azure will create the tables inside our database, and will try to get that list of the employees. Here is an empty array of employee. It's empty because our database doesn't contain yet data. And here you should notice that despite our local database contains data, this data will not be automatically uploaded to Azure. So by default, that this data will not be uploaded. Instead, a new table or a new database will be created on Azure. In this case, if you want to to upload your local database to Azure, you can do that by using SQL Server management tools. That software you can import your local database and just export it to your Azure database. For us in this demo we won't do that. Instead we will go and add data to our Azure database. So I'll go to my Windows Phone and Windows 8 applications. So now I'll go and add new employees. So I'll go and use my Xamarin Forms mobile applications. I'll go to my Android project, and here I should be able to add a new employee. But we should stop here and remember that we have set our Xamarin Forms applications to connect to the local to our local host web service. Remember, in this in the PCL project, where here we have set our employees services, which uses the REST client to connect to our local host web services. So now, as we want our application to connect to the one hosted on Azure, we should go and change this URL address. So we no longer need the local host and also the port number. Instead, we'll go and use the one provided by Azure, which is the URL here. So I'll go and paste that. Should use only one HTTP. So this one, by only changing this URL, now you point your Xamarin Forms application to connect not from your localhost web service, but to connect from the Azure web service. So if I run our Xamarin Forms applications now, so now you see we get, after running our 3 applications, we get an empty list of employees because no employees are stored on our Azure database. So let's go and add some new employees. So I'll use the Android project. Let's call it Mohammed, and let's say it's the marketing. So we'll go through that process of posting some employees. I'll go and add some other ones so that we can have like 3 or 4 employees inside our database. Here you should make sure that your emulator is connected to the internet, otherwise you can go and delete this emulator and choose another one from this wide list of emulators you have. So let's continue and add some other employees. Let's add Ahmed from the finance, first employee, and let's do the same from our Windows Phone application. Here let's add an employee, call it Marwin. From the business department, let's say, post employee, and the same from our Windows 8 application. Here let's add an employee, call it let's say Ali, for example, from the human resources department, post employee. Now if I come back to my employees web service here and hit refresh, then you can see now we have the all new list of employees stored inside my Azure SQL Server. The same here, if I go to my MVC controller, I want to go and check if that controller also displays the data. So here it is. And the same also if I go and restart our Xamarin Forms applications, And yes, here it is, all our data coming from our services hosted on Windows Azure. Of course, here all the other operations works also fine for the put employee and delete employees. You can go and try that yourself, and also you can try this hosted web service from your own mobile application, as this is a public web service, so anyone can connect to it. It doesn't use authentication or authorization, it just works for everyone. It's a public web service right now. So here, as you might see in the previous videos, I hadn't used the Android emulator because I have to make some configurations and some settings in order to make it connect to localhost web services. But as I didn't succeed to make that happen, I worked with the Windows Phone and Windows 8 applications. But now you definitely can make it connect to your public web services. So with that, I only have to say thank you. So now that our application runs on the different emulators, from the Android emulator to the Windows Phone emulator and our Windows 8 application, now we want to test our application not on emulators but on real devices. This is a required step to go to production. For that, we have to deploy here our application on an Android device here and a Windows Phone device. And they have done that using Visual Studio by connecting my devices through the USB cable here for both devices. And for each platform, I should choose a device for Windows Phone and choose the name of the device for my Android platform. Another thing to pay attention to is to choose ARM here instead of x64 or x86. You should absolutely choose ARM instead of any other configuration here, because this one is the one required by your device, which uses the ARM architecture. So after doing that, I have deployed the application, and now it runs on both devices, as you see here. So let's take a look for each device. So you see here for the user interface, it almost looks the same as on the emulator. So let's start with the Android device. Here you see the first page, which contains the list of all the employees I have. So if I go and click add new employee, then I have this user interface where I can go and add a new employee. Let's call it Ahmed, for example. Let's say he's working on the HR department, post employee. Then that will go to the website and add that employee to our database. Of course, the same thing works for the other functionalities, which are putting an employee to change its properties and deleting an employee. For the Windows Phone application, here it displays the same list of the employees as we saw on our Android application. So it's almost the same data as it's coming from the same web server. Then right from my Windows Phone application, I can go and add a new employee and right click to add, let's say, an employee, call it Ali, for example, and working on the department, call it finance department. Hit post employee. That will go to add that employee to our database. So the same thing for the search functionality. If I go and search for an employee, oops, that goes out from my application. I try again. And here, if I look for an employee, call it Ali for example, and hit search, then I'll get the two employees with that name. So let's try with my Android application. Let's try the search functionality. So here I type Ali with capital A, and as our web service returns all the data with uppercase or lowercase values, it will return both Ali with capital case and lowercase. So by doing that, you should consider that of course your application should be connected to the internet, and your website is up and running. So for that, now we have built our Xamarin Forms applications that works on all mobile platforms, all major mobile platforms, from Android to Windows and also iOS platforms. Unfortunately, I didn't test it on the iOS platform, but it should give the same result as for Android and Windows. So thank you.